this regular meeting of the Township Board, Saugatuck Township Board of April 8, 2020 to order. And I will call the roll. Aldrich.
Here.
Bigford.
Here.
Marcy.
Here.
Almrick.
Here.
Osmond. Here. We are all present. Our next item is some Zoom instructions, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, if I can just briefly, we are all going through some change and learning a new platform. So just want to go over a couple pieces of advice for everyone that hopefully makes this meeting move as smoothly as possible. First off, for public participation, I can show you a couple items that we outlined in the public notice that was released for this meeting, but specifically it outlines the process for public participation. When we get to that point of the meeting, upon request from the supervisor, individuals who would like to speak and give comment to the township board, please identify themselves. I'll then create a speakers list and we'll work through the list, giving everyone an opportunity for their 3 minutes to comment to the board. Upon completion of the list, any other folks who would like to speak will be recognized. And at that point, we'll keep moving on through the meeting. Other than that, there are a few suggestions for electronic meeting conduct to try to make this as productive as possible for the board. Some items including all votes will be taken via roll call, so folks on the phone or folks who don't have video can hear who is voting on specific items, as well as we're going to ask that you please say your name before speaking. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking. If you're on the phone, *6 is the best way to mute and unmute yourself. This meeting is being recorded, so the minutes can be taken after the fact. Please be respectful of those speaking and don't interrupt. Interrupting and interjecting are amplified on platforms such as this. And lastly, if anyone is disruptive to the point that it prevents the township board from conducting their regular business, you will be given a warning, but after that fact, you will be removed from the meeting. I don't expect we'll get to that point, but I would like to give everyone that notice ahead of time. And lastly, just be patient with us as much as possible. We're learning together, we're learning a new system, and we're gonna get through it as a team. So with that, those are a couple Zoom instructions and reminders. The last one is outlined in the notice, but if there are any folks with disabilities who need accommodations for this meeting, we'll do the best we can to get through that. So thank you.
I think our next agenda item is to approve the agenda.
Correct.
I would like to request one addition, please, to this would go under new business, I guess item G. I'd like us to have a short discussion on the short-term rental issue in light of the fact that the two cities have both adopted resolutions related to that, and maybe Griffin can give us an update on that, and then we can just discuss if there's any action we might want to consider either tonight or later.
Okay. Any motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended and to ratify the procedures for public participation and meeting conduct as described in the notice of public meetings via video conference.
Any support?
I'll support that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I forget all the time here. Aldrich?
Yes.
Bigford?
Yes.
Marcy?
Yes.
Henrik?
Yes.
Osmond? Yes. Motion carries 5-0. Are we ready for public comments? Griffin, are we ready for public comments?
Sure. Yes, we can We can take public comment. What we'll do to try to make this as easy as possible is if there's anyone, I'll unmute everybody. And if there's anyone who would like to give public comment, please state your name. I'll create a list and we'll go from there. Is there anyone who would like to be added to the list? Please say your name.
Okay, is there anyone who is not on the list that would like to speak? Hearing none, the Township Board will continue with the meeting. And our next item, review of invoices. Did everybody have a chance to look at the invoices?
Yes.
And the additional supplemental information that was sent this afternoon?
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody have any questions? Brenda, have any questions?
No, I do not.
Abby? Stacy, you're
Yeah.
good?
Me?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I have a minute. Sorry, I should have had this marked.
Fortunately, Griffin has put the suggested motions on PowerPoint slides. Thank goodness.
Oh, that's nice.
I don't think it's that important anyway. Okay, we can move on.
Can I make a motion or?
Yes,
Or
you
I
can.
move to approve all bills and payroll in the amount of $57,255.11.
Any support?
I'll support.
Any discussion?
No.
I'm going slowly, so I give everybody a fair chance, but I'm not hearing any discussion. So we can take a roll call vote. Bigford,
Yes?
Marcy,
Yes.
Comrick,
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Aldrich,
Yes.
motion carries 5-0. And our next business item is the treasurer's report.
Okay, I'm reporting that as of March 31st, our general fund bank balance is at $2.7 million, came down $100,000 from March. Our budget versus actual through March 31st is now running at $377,000 positive. Spending is running about 19% under budget, while revenue is running flat to budget for the end of third quarter. Reporting on our investment CD value is at $757,000. It actually went up $3,000 from February, which is encouraging in light of current economic situations. In terms of the year to date for fiscal year 2020 through the end of March, there still remain no departmental level overages. And in March, there seem to be no notable expenditures that need to be highlighted tonight. Happy to report that I was able to complete the tax year settlement with Allegan County, done remotely last week. Had great assistance from IT Wright and Jennifer Morris at the county. We've been in daily back and forth confirming things, and Kyle Harris has also been very helpful remotely getting signatures on the two tax warrants for the summer and winter that had to be submitted as well to the county. So everything happened well. We are balanced with the county, and we're only one day late, which sounds pretty good to me. Just a reminder, at the March meeting, this board did pre-approve the final two disbursements, which were made on March 13th and 27th of March. Both of these were made. They ended up totaling less than expected, $125,000. And just a little addendum, it was interesting, something came to light yesterday from Saugatuck Public Schools with their finance director. We spent a lot of time on the phone this morning. It appears that a substantial check to them for about $250,000, either they didn't receive it, or as I suspect, the schools closed down before we did. I think it might still be on somebody's desk. Good news is I can rectify that tomorrow, either send them a new check, but it made me happy because for some reason our bank balance in the tax account was not down to zero or close to zero as it should be, but it will be if and when Saugatuck Schools cash that check. Thank you.
Thank you. I think our next item is approval of the minutes for the March 11, 2020 regular meeting. I'm sorry, can you not hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
I heard somebody talking. I don't know who though. Yeah.
so did everybody get a chance to review those minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
John,
Yes.
any comments?
What?
Comments on the minutes?
Those were submitted. I reviewed these last week and got the changes to Abby and Lori, and looks to me like all those changes were made. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented from the March 11th, 2020 board meeting.
Any
I will
support?
second.
Any discussion?
Just for, since we do have some people participating in our meeting, which is fantastic, I just wanted to clarify that I take the minutes and John just helps me look over them because I take pretty thorough minutes. There are a lot of opportunities just for typos, spelling, etc. He is not making any substantial changes whatsoever.
Yeah, I saw that there were a couple of typos, but I knew John would take care of it, so.
I did.
So I got a motion from John and a
Yes.
support from
Brenda.
Brenda. Any discussion?
No.
Helmrich,
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Aldrich,
Yes.
Bigford,
Yes.
Darcy.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Now we have minutes from our special meeting on March 17, 2020. Everybody have a chance to look at those?
Yes. And they look fine. I move to approve the minutes of March 17, 2020 special meeting as presented. Amended? Or presented. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Any support?
I'll support that.
Any further discussion? We'll take the roll. Osmond, yes. Aldrich,
Yes.
Bigford,
Yes.
Darcy,
Yes.
Helmrich.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. And our next item is a correspondence from Scott Bosgraf, review, the fire district review of North Shores lot number 15. We can accept that as information. Any comments or discussion on the letter?
No.
No.
Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item. Administrative Policy Handbook. I know that Griffin worked really hard on this and he made some changes from the last meeting. And to me, they look very satisfactory, but I'd like to hear, and if you guys have any comments or.
It looked good to me. I know he worked really, really hard on this and I appreciate it, and looked great in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah, and I was able to, I noted the changes that we had all agreed upon last time, so excellent work.
Perfect. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve the adoption of the Administrative Policy Handbook as presented.
Any support?
I'll second. Support.
Support by Brenda. Any more discussion? We'll do a roll call. Aldrich,
Yes.
Bigford,
Yes.
Marcy,
Yes.
Helmrich,
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Motion carries 5-0. And we can move on to the next item, which is the proposed budget. I know that that Griffin has been working very hard on this, and I have been involved and gave some feedback to him about the budget. And I'm going to let him kind of do a review of what he's presenting here tonight. We're not going to take any action tonight. We're just going to get it presented to us as the proposed budget and allow us time to get back to him with any feedback we might have. So we have to just remember that we're looking at the forest. We're not looking at the trees. We're the high-level policy decision makers. And of course, if you want to go any deeper into it, Griffin's available at any time to review with you. Griffin?
Thank you. No, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to go through some overview with you. I've got a few overview slides that are primarily going to be focused on the budget narrative transmittal letter. If you have any questions throughout this, please write them down, and then I'd be happy to go through them at the end of the presentation and go into as much or as little detail as you all would like at this time. To start on that, we'll first look at the timeline. I know I've been preaching this schedule for several months now, but I think it's important to go over again just to see where we've been and to talk a little bit about where we're going in the next couple months. So as you all know, this whole process started with the Township Board establishing your priorities for the year. We did some goal setting. We brought in a facilitator in December. And then on February 12th, the Township Board adopted the Saugatuck Township Board 2020 goals. Staff then used those goals as the basis for preparing this budget throughout the year for the next fiscal year. In April, where we are now, we're presenting the first draft of the proposed budget, not looking for any action, just to discuss, give you all the overview, the big picture, get any feedback. Staff then over the next month will work to incorporate that feedback the best we can and bring back an updated draft in May. At that point, if the board is comfortable, you all may adopt a tentative budget or give more feedback, and we can incorporate that. Once a tentative budget's adopted, staff will do the necessary noticing. We'll schedule a public hearing for the next meeting with the idea that by the time June comes around, the Township Board can hold required public hearings and adopt the necessary acts to be ready to go for the beginning of the fiscal year 2020-2021. With that, I would like to point out a few of changes to this year's budget. I know one of the Township Board's goals that was discussed with me right when I started was looking to update the format of the Township's annual budget. So I want to point out first that traditionally the Township's budget has been focused on line item detail, which is fantastic. That's our individual lines within each fund showing how much budgeting in each line. Again, it is really the crux of the budget. It's the detail. However, for folks who aren't as day-to-day involved with the budget, it can also be difficult to understand. So one of the things staff really worked on this year was including the 4 other categories into this year's budget. And without going them in too much detail right now, I find it really simple to look at it this way. The budget starts with the introduction, which is really what? This is the budget narrative, transmittal letter. This is what we're doing for the year. We've then got policies and planning, or the why. This is the policies, the goals, what's behind the budget. Why are we putting this together, and why is it allocating money in the places you'll see? And then the how. which is the financial plan overview. These are, as you saw in the document in the packet, these are the summary pages for each fund as well as each department within the general fund, which for 99 out of 100 people, they're going to get all the information they want out of the budget from those summary pages, hopefully in a way that's a lot easier to understand than the traditional line item detail. However, the line item detail is still included in the budget. I'm happy to discuss that as much or as little as you'd like. And we also included an additional information section with some supplementary information, again, to hopefully make this document as usable as possible. Moving on, before we get into the specifics of the budget, I also think it's really helpful, not only for the board, but for those from the public who are joining us to really understand some of the nuance of government accounting or fund-based accounting. So as you can see from this graphic, there's different ping pong balls in this cup. And if you look at the cup as the township's budget, each fund fits in the cup, but yet they're ping pong balls. They don't mix together. They all sit there next to each other. And the reason I point that out is one of the major confusions about governmental accounting and government budgets is there's different pots of money that really can only be crossed in very specific circumstances. So from the example here, you can see we have the general fund. There's specific money that comes in for the general fund, and then specific things we spend that money on to provide services to the residents of the township. Same thing, road fund has specific revenue that comes in and it provides specific services, but these funds really don't cross. So I liked this graphic as just a reminder of the township's overall budget, or that cup, is made up of lots of different funds or ping pong balls. So moving on with that, we'll start a little bit with the general fund. This slide's really intended to just paint an overall picture of the township's revenue for the general fund. As you all know, the general fund provides a majority of the township's statutorily required services as well as limited discretionary services. But I show you the revenue slide first because when you're talking about budgeting, it's really smart to start with revenue. You need to know how much money you're anticipating you're going to bring in before you can move forward and go, how do we want to allocate this money? I'd also like to point out that the township really has three primary sources of revenue. So you have property taxes, and I lump the tax administrative fee. This is the money that we collect or that we get when we collect taxes for other entities. So you can really see we've got 1, 2, which is permitting revenue, or excuse me, state revenue sharing, and 3, which is permitting revenue. So the township's budget is primarily made up of 3 revenue sources. And another important note is the total revenue for this year, it's about $60,000 less than in previous years. And that's primarily from continued reductions of the transfers from other funds. 2 years ago, it was about $111,000. Last year, the township board cut that to about $62,000. This year, we've reduced that all except of $12,000, which will be coming from the cemetery fund, which is a justifiable cost reimbursement for the cemetery sexton salary, as well as a share of the township's general liability insurance, which is used to insure the township's cemeteries. And lastly, on this slide, I really just like to note the impacts of COVID-19. We all know that there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and we don't exactly know what this is going to mean, but it is anticipated that the economic impacts of COVID-19 are going to impact the township's revenues. The general fund relies heavily on state revenue sharing and permitting activities, both of which can become unpredictable or unreliable in times of sustained economic downturn and or recession. And unfortunately, that's what we're anticipating moving forward with COVID-19. So I'm happy to discuss this more, but if anything, one of the discussions we may want to have today or at a future time is this conservative enough of an estimate? So moving forward to the general fund and expenditures, as I mentioned, this provides the statutory required services and limited discretionary services. I'm not going to go into departmental descriptions into those specifics in this presentation, but I am happy to talk about those. Some notable expenses for the fiscal year 2020-21 budget that you all may be interested in is we will be taking $50,000, or it's proposed we will be taking $50,000 from the general fund balance to continue contributing towards paying down the unfunded liabilities associated with the merged pension system. This is above and beyond the minimum required contributions that the township's required to make each year. Additionally, with that contribution, the township general fund balance would still remain within and or above the desired threshold outlined in the township's general fund balance policy. And really just to conclude with the general fund, with approximately $60,000 less revenue anticipated for this year, in uncertainty due to the local, state, national economy, a modest 2% cost of living increase for full-time staff, the proposed general fund budget is extremely lean this year. I think we all knew that was coming, and the township's budget's been lean to begin with. But this year's general fund budget really provides little room above and beyond what's required to maintain the office and provide our expected services. So I really encourage the township board to continue to provide direction moving forward in terms of what we can do to either cut future expenses and or generate additional revenue for fiscal year 2021-2022. To move into the township's other funds, I'll go through these really quick. We've got the road fund. Notable projects proposed in this budget include the 2020 road projects, which you'll see later in the agenda of this meeting, but the township board already approved work orders for. We'd be moving forward with all of those projects. Working with our engineering firm to update the road plan in anticipation for renewals of the two road millages the township collects. As it notes, millage planning, and then lastly, taking some next steps when it comes to Lakeshore Drive. The cemetery fund, some notable projects include some repairs and upgrades to the cemetery shed, repainting the cemetery signs, millage planning, preparing ballot language as this millage expires at the end of 2020, planting flowers as we have the last several years, and reviewing the cemetery rules, regulations, and ordinance. The ambulance fund, this will likely need to be amended once the township board considers the recommendation from the Emergency Services Committee. We've had a lot of discussion on this. At this point, we're budgeting for what we would need to move forward with the current proposal we've had in front of us, understanding this more than likely will change moving forward. The sewer debt fund, so the township currently has outstanding bonds which are used to pay for the development of the township sewer system. This fund is used to pay for the debt service payments associated with that, and it's anticipated that those bonds will be retired at the end of 2022. So we're getting close. The capital projects fund will be taking an amount of money to do some preventative maintenance on the trails that are already constructed in the township. This would look a lot like the work we recently did to the township's parking lot, or you'll hear it called crack sealing. We would need to do a little bit more into an exact estimate, but at this point, it would not go above $10,000. Park project fund, we would be, it's proposed to do some repairs and upgrades to the River Bluff Park shelter and the dog park fence, both of which are currently being requested by the Township's Parks Commission. When we get to the water project fund, some notable projects include continuing the water service line inventory that's being mandated by the state in response to Flint, the lead and copper rule work. Some legal work related to the township's water agreements, a rate study, asset management plan. We've discussed this at length. This would be how we could move forward with a review of the township's REU schedule, figure out our current obligations in the system, and try to figure out if our current rates are bringing in the resources we need to responsibly manage the system moving forward. And getting updated utility maps that we could then use on our website. I think you all know one of the questions we get most often is where the township's utilities, when people are looking to develop, a lot of times they want to know about these utilities. The township does not at this time have an up-to-date map, and we could save a lot of staff time and consultant work if we have up-to-date maps. Similar projects noted in the sewer project fund. I would also like to note for sewer project, water project, park project, and capital project funds, these are all estimates right now, but at this point, looking to paint the big picture over the next month, staff will be narrowing down and getting more specific estimates for what these projects will cost. So by May, we can have a better, more accurate picture for you all. But with that, I'll conclude that with 4 major points. First off, I hope you all can see from this budget that it's based on the goals you all adopted in February, as you can see outlined in here, and I'm happy to go into more detail, but in various different ways, many of these goals are advanced by this budget, as was challenged to staff at its adoption. We don't know at this point what the impacts of COVID-19 are going to be. And that's a really difficult place to be when you're talking about budgeting. And I know through conversations with managers around the state, everyone's really struggling right now to know how much or how little they should be cutting from revenue estimates, as well as just being good stewards of public money and realizing that people are hurting right now. So this entire budget presentation is keeping in mind of the unknown impacts of COVID-19. 3, I have planning for the future. As you could see through the budget narrative that was included in the packet, I think the message or the summary of this budget really is planning for the future. A lot of the projects proposed in this budget not only benefit the township now, but really set us up to be successful in the long term. And then lastly, as we mentioned a little bit at general fund revenue, we've continued to have discussions that there is some tension between the service level expectation and the organizational capacity of our organization. And over the next year, I really urge the township board to continue to have that discussion. Please let me know what I can do to help. But as we move forward, we really need to get some board direction on where we would like to see this budget moving. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, go into line item detail. I can pull up a packet and work through specific pages, but I'd really like to thank you for the opportunity to put this together to serve the Set Township Board and the residents of the township. I'm really appreciative of all of your leadership, and it's because of all of you we're able to make progress in alignment with your goals. So with that, I'm happy to do the best I can to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the township board?
I'd like to make a comment first and just
John?
really deeply, deeply express my and our gratitude to Griffin on taking heed of, one of our, well, it was our first priority under financial stewardship to reformat the budget so that it is transparent and more understandable. And I think what he's done with this new narrative and the entire formatting is, it's beyond my expectations, and especially to have it so early in the year. So thank you, Griffin.
Thank you.
And then I do have a couple questions.
Please.
Okay, so I'm going off of the packet on page 60. This is a question relative to the cemetery fund.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, what is the process and timeline that we need to be aware of since the current cemetery fund millage expires at the end of this year?
What we need to be aware of is we can collect, and I apologize, I'm going to be bringing up the packet at the same time because we lost it for some reason. The current cemetery millage can be collected through the end of 2020. Therefore, we can collect it this year, but starting next year, we would need a renewal to be able to continue to collect that or that millage, a different millage, a renewal, or something along that line. So as was outlined, we more than likely are going to need to be doing some serious millage planning the middle of this year to begin working with our attorney on renewal language, if that's the direction the township board would like to move, and look to get that on the ballot early next year.
So it wouldn't have to be on the ballot by November of this year.
It would not. Now, and again, at this point, and again, one of the township board's goals is millage planning. That may be something we're able to do, and that may give us a little more buffer. And if that's the case, then it would definitely be an advisable step. But we would just have to get that approved before the next time we would need to collect.
Okay.
And if they're collected in the winter tax bills, if I'm understanding. So we would have both the March and the May elections in 2021 to be able to put that on the ballot in time to be able to collect that for winter taxes 2021.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's my understanding at this time. But yeah, once the board's comfortable giving more direction that we want to move in the direction of renewing, staff will be happy to confirm some of that.
Okay. And then on page 85 of the packet, this is just in reference to the total for the transfer of funds from other funds. I'm just curious because I don't have this year's budget in front of me. That total of 62,000, is that the same as this year, or are you proposing?
No, so
change?
So the budget, and what we could look at the line item level is it's split up into two lines. There's transfers from other funds, and then there's transfers from the fund balance.
Right.
This number right here that you're referring to is the combination of both. The 50,000 from the fund balance, which would go towards that extra contribution to MERS.
Right.
And the 12,000 that would be coming from the fund, or excuse me, from the cemetery fund to pay the cemetery sexton salary and a share of the general liability insurance. So no, it's coincidence that they're the same number, but no, this is two specific lines where the 62,000 number that was budgeted to be transferred from other funds, there was also money coming from the fund balance, which was a different line, so it would have been more than that.
Okay. And do you know, and if you don't have to answer this today if you don't have the number in your head. I'm just curious because we made a substantial increase last year in the funding of the pension plan, MERS. Are you proposing additional or just maintaining that already higher level?
Maintaining that already higher level.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, John?
Oh, let's see. I might have one or two, sorry. Oh, I know this is getting very detailed, but just in terms of budgeting for technology, and I think you're going to address this later anyway, but I was just curious if you thought we needed to budget more for next fiscal year for the replacement of the server, or do you think at this point we can handle that with this year's operating budget?
I anticipate we'll be able to handle that with this year's budget. In the next agenda item, when we talk about April 2020 budget amendments, I'll be able to go into a little more detail.
Okay.
I'll be requesting a few amendments to move some money around, but in terms of the total amount of money, I anticipate being able to handle that in this fiscal year. And to go back, John, these are the specific lines I was referring to. So the 50 and 12 is the 62, where for last year's adopted budget, they were over here.
Right, okay, I see it. And then on page 102 of the packet, I had my proofing cap on. This is Harbor Commission.
Yes.
And in the detail for outside services for the new buoys, et cetera, it says $3,000, but then the total says $2,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think that's it at this point.
Hey, does anybody else have any questions? Brenda?
I'm unmuting. I do not have any questions, but I wanted to second what John said earlier. Griffin, you've done a fantastic job. And I just really appreciate all the work you've done.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Abby?
I was really pleasantly surprised. I don't necessarily enjoy looking at budgets. It's not my forte, but this was so much more user-friendly.
Yes.
The narrative was so helpful. And I think too that none of this was any surprise. It was just more of of everything we've been. I think Griffin's done a fantastic job of keeping us apprised of all these situations. So everything fit, and it was just all in one place and much more understandable. So thank you, Griffin.
Thank you.
Stacy, if you have any questions or
agree.
comments?
Yep, I got my applause there. No,
Well,
great
how did-
job, Griffin, as always. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're pretty savvy there.
I know.
That's
I just
So
want to
let-
repeat
yeah.
what all of you said, that that Griffin has really made lemonade with the lemons. Not that that's any criticism on our last budget, because that was John really worked hard on that, and he did a good job what he had to work with.
Right.
So, Griffin has really done a great job of putting it together in a way that people can read it and understand it and follow along and not be caught off guard by how come we don't have any money in this department, or what we need to do to make that work. Thank you, Griffin.
Thank you.
Hey, so I have a kind of a blue sky, which might be unwise in these days of gray skies, question for the process. In terms of specific individual items that any of us may individually or collectively like to see in a new budget, what's the best process for that? I know, Griffin, you and I have discussed some of them, and there's only a handful, but I just would like to hear what the path forward is for you to get any more feedback from any of us on more specific items.
Well, I'll answer part of that if you don't mind.
Sure.
One of the things that Griffin pointed out is the tension between the expectations and the actual revenue. And we are a township, we're not a city. So we don't have the same kinds of expenses that cities have, and we don't have the same kinds of revenue. And I think there's a tension between what our township residents want and need in the way of services, and whether or not they're willing to pay for it. And that's going to be an issue that we really have to discuss over the coming year. So anything that's not in the budget now, if we want to add something, we will have to cut something. And there's not a lot left to cut.
So it becomes more of an allocation issue.
Right. Do you want to have somebody in the office all day, every day? Do you need a professional manager? Do we cut our wages? We have to cut something. Do we cut parks? If we want to add something, we have to figure out how much that's going to cost and where is the money going to come from.
If I may.
Yeah, but what is that process before we get to the next step?
Sure. So, Madam Supervisor, may I speak?
Yes, please.
If it's a question of any of you or anyone in the public would like to sit down and in more detail go, hey, is this included in this budget? I'd be happy to do that at any time. If it's a discussion of, hey, I don't think this is included and I would like to see it added, and as the supervisor mentioned, that's going to have to coincide with an equal cut somewhere else. I would encourage that to be done at a public meeting at the board level, because at a certain point, the proposed budget includes what staff is proposing we need moving forward to operate and to advance all of your goals. But if you all would like to see something different, as the elected officials, you have every right to do that, and staff would take the direction from you. So if there's specific items that you don't think are included, or goals you would like to see shifted, that would probably need to either start tonight or at a special meeting or at the May meeting, however you all are comfortable proceeding with that.
I think the either at the May meeting or a special meeting would be most appropriate. And I'm only one vote, so if you want me to call a special meeting, I would be happy to do that. Just give me your feedback individually and see if we can't come up with something that Griffin can pull together for us by the May meeting.
So how about, I would suggest, if any of us, again, individually or collectively, have a specific item or items that we, I mean, some of them might already be in here. So I can sit down with Griffin to go through what I call my wish list, see what his response is. How about we funnel any of those specifics to Cindy as well as Griffin? And then if we feel there's a need for a special meeting, we can go that route. Or perhaps we can just, everything's in a good position to just be dealt with at the regular May meeting. Does that make sense?
To me, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, my battery was running low.
Okay.
I had to get my cord.
Do you want me to
Did you
repeat?
hear that?
Do you want me to repeat what I suggested?
Sure.
Okay. I was just suggesting that right now, any of us individually or collectively, if there's a specific item that we would like to see in the budget, and it might already be there, we can share that by email with Cindy and Griffin, and then wait for them to advise us if they think there's a need for a special meeting because we have to weigh the add versus cut issue, or if our questions are answered satisfactorily, we can wait and address it at the regular May board meeting.
If there's any reason that we couldn't talk about some of those things tonight, I mean, get them out there and figure out where we're going. What do you think, Griffin?
I mean, I'm happy to discuss them at this time or in the future. I think out of the sake of being direct, there's not a lot of room for wish list items.
Right.
So again, please, if you all have items you'd like to see in the budget, I'm more than happy to hear them. I'm more than happy to discuss if they're already included or if there's any way to make that happen. But we, especially in the general fund, we don't have a lot of wiggle room or a lot of room for discretional spending.
Right.
Do you want to make a wish list and give me a call, or?
Well, that's what I propose.
Let's just do that then.
Yeah, Griffin's already seen mine. I don't think we need to go through it all right now.
Okay.
And I'm also coming from the point of view, yes, everything that's been stated is true, but as we know, through the third quarter of this year, our spending is below budget.
So far.
Right. We have only 3 months to go. I'm being optimistic, I guess, as I said.
Okay.
I'm being a little blue sky and a gray sky atmosphere, but I just think we should all take that opportunity to get any of those points out there, and we can, like I said, we'll send them to Cindy and Griffin, and
Absolutely.
And we'll work through them and come back with a recommendation.
right. And I think that could be resolved hopefully at the May meeting and maybe not need a special meeting.
Perfect. Any other comments or discussion?
No.
So we're ready to accept this as information,
Yes.
and we can move on.
Okay.
Okay, we have the budget amendments. I'll let Griffin do this one as well.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity again. Just a few budget amendments that are in front of you this month. I have them broken down into two primary categories, as you can see on the slide. The first one is in follow-up to what Treasurer John Helmrich mentioned earlier. The township's been going through some technical difficulties over the last month, and on March 10th, the township's computer server crashed. It's been temporarily patched. However, it's strongly recommended by our IT service provider, IT Right, that the township move forward with purchasing a replacement. With some of the research I've done, most servers like the ones we have with the amount of use it gets, they have an estimated life of 5 to 8 years, and our servers, without being exact, is 10 plus years old. So we're past the anticipated life of it. It seemed to have served the township well. We're just at the point where we need to look at moving forward in a new direction. So there's some amendments to allow us to move some money around that's currently allocated in the budget to be able to move forward. Based on the township's purchasing policy, I don't need specific approval from the board to proceed. However, we do need to move the money around, so you all at the same time are getting an opportunity to see that the quote that staff's looking to move forward with is included in the packet. We've looked at several others. This one does go a little bit more cloud-based, but again, that's the direction it seems like the standard's moving. It will be temporarily delayed right now with obviously the public health situation going on, but if the township board approves these amendments, staff will look to get that replacement scheduled as soon as possible. The second amendment on this list you can see is in regard to the water debt fund. So while I was working through this year's budget, one of the things we found is the township had a water debt fund, but the township also had no outstanding water debt. All of that had been paid off. Because of that, it struck my interest that there was a fund balance set aside in that fund. So after working with our auditor and doing some research, what we found was when bonds like this are taken out, it's standard practice to include a level of contingency that's collected. And at the end, there was some money left over, just short of $25,000. And after consulting with our auditor, he is willing to work with us to be able to appropriately transfer that from the water debt fund to the water project fund that can be used on future water projects, and make it clear that that money is available and not just sitting in a water debt fund. So if the board is comfortable with that, there is a proposed amendment in front of you, and staff would look to work with our auditor to complete that by the end of this fiscal year. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion, please?
I'll move to approve the requested April 2020 budget amendments as, I have to move you guys around, submitted, and authorize the township manager to proceed with Water Debt Fund 365 transfer and purchase of a replacement computer server.
Motion by Brenda, is there a support?
I'll support.
Second.
Support by Stacy. Is there any further discussion?
We really need it.
I know you do. I know we need the new server.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we'll do another roll call. Bigford,
Yes.
Marcy,
Yes.
Helmrich,
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Aldrich.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. All right, this is the connection fee agreement, very similar to the one that we did not too long ago for collecting the connection fees over time in installment payments. I believe that Griffin has already had the paperwork drawn up, and we just need to approve it or not approve it. So does anybody have any questions? Either for me or for Griffin?
Nope.
No questions?
Nope.
Would someone please make a motion?
I'd like to move to approve the proposed connection fee agreement as presented and authorize the township supervisor and township clerk to execute the agreement with the applicable parties.
Motion by John. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Brenda. Is there any further discussion? Okay, we'll do another roll call. Well, cross your names off here. Marcy?
Yes.
Helmrich?
Yes.
Osmond? Yes. Aldrich?
Yes.
And Bigford?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. The 2020 road projects. I'm going to, one more time, let Griffin take the lead on this and just give us a really brief update.
Sure, thank you. So bids were opened by the Allegan County Road Commission based on the work orders that the township approved late fall, early winter last year. And they recommend acceptance of the low bid received by Michigan Paving and Materials in the amount of just over $300,000. The one note I'd like to make is, as you can see in the packet, is that this bid amount does not include the cost of the Riverside/Dugout Road project. That's still being pursued in-house by the Road Commission. There's a brief situation update included in the packet. So this bid is for all of the road reconstruction, resurfacing projects that the Township Board approved work orders for the exception of the Riverside Road and Dugout project.
And 60th Street?
I'll go over that when we get to the,
When we get to it. Okay, perfect.
thank you.
Any more questions for Griffin? Any questions? Okay, I'd like to hear a motion, please.
I'll move to approve the acceptance of the low bid received from Michigan Paving and Materials in the amount of $300,309.20 for the projects outlined in the attached 2020 bid tabulation spreadsheet and authorize the issuance of checks up to that amount without further board action to allow for more timely payment of the applicable contractors. Sorry.
Okay, motion by Abby. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Stacy. Any questions or discussion? We'll do another roll call. Helmrich?
Yes.
Osmond? Yes. Aldrich?
Yes.
Bigford?
Yes.
Marcy?
Yes. Did forget me.
Well, I didn't know where I started. Because I try to rotate the order. Okay. 2021 road projects. Griffin?
Thank you. And yes, as you mentioned, there's a brief update on the 60th Street project included in my memo, included in the board packet. But before you all are the amendments that were requested to be produced for 2021 local road projects. I'm very grateful for all the work of the Allegan County Road Commission to help us get to this point. And if satisfactory, the township board can make a motion to approve these work orders, and we will move forward with this process. And as you saw for 2020 projects, which you all just accepted the bid, that would be the next step associated with these projects. But as you all know, the road commission's looking to get a little bit further ahead of this system, and that tends to get us lower bid prices moving forward. So that's the reason why we've got 2020 and 2021 so close together. We're adjusting the normal cycle, if you will, and as we move forward, I would anticipate them being a little bit more spread out.
Okay,
I'm happy
any
to answer any
questions?
questions.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
Can't see the bottom of the screen.
I'll do it. I move to approve the 2021 local road project work orders as presented and authorize the township supervisor and township clerk to sign and return them to Allegan County Road Commission.
Is there, that was the motion by Brenda.
I'll support.
Okay, who supported?
Abby.
Abby.
We both kind of did. We all
Okay.
supported.
All right, so this time I'm gonna start with Osmond, yes. Aldrich,
Yes.
Bigford,
Yes.
Marcy,
Yes.
Helmrich.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Letter of gratitude. We've been going through a really hard time. And there's a lot of people that are working because they have to be working. And we just want to provide a very short letter for Griffin to sign, supported by the board, to these departments, thanking them for their work in these hard times. I know you probably saw the letter in your packet, but it's only a couple of paragraphs. And I think it's just a very nice gesture on behalf of the township.
I agree.
Yep.
Any more comments?
Well, I was going to say this in my fire report, but Chief Janik has been asked to coordinate finding and distributing PPE for first responders and firefighters in Allegan County. So he's been really busy with that. And he told me that people have really stepped up and given just lots of hand sanitizer, gloves. These restaurants in town have been very generous, and he really appreciates everybody pulling together and helping. But they've been very busy, so I'm sure they'll appreciate this letter.
It's a small thing, but it's an important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? No more questions? I'm open to a motion.
I move to authorize the township manager to sign and send the letters of gratitude COVID-19 on behalf of the township board to the identified organizations.
Is
I'll
there
second
support?
that.
So that was Brenda made the motion and John supported.
No, Stacy
Stacy.
did.
Stacy supported, sorry.
No, she
No,
was-
Tracy made the motion. And I don't know, who supported, John or Brenda?
John did.
It was
John did.
close. It was a tie.
Okay, okay.
Thank you, Griffin, I think, and Cindy too.
That's great, you guys.
I
Yeah,
think it's a great thing to do.
Okay, Aldrich,
yes.
Bigford,
Yes.
Marcy,
Yes.
Helmrich,
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Motion carries 5-0.
Before we would move on to the next slide, we did amend the agenda to include short-term rentals as an 11G.
That is correct.
So I requested this. I'd like to have a brief discussion and maybe get some more informed feedback from Cindy and Griffin, because there's been a lot of postings on Facebook relative to the fact that Douglas and the city of Saugatuck have both issued sort of amended resolutions to amend current policy during COVID-19 relative to short-term rentals.
I think that they were just notices formed by the managers and with the Allegan County Sheriff. Short-term rentals are not considered essential services. And even though our stay-at-home order is going to expire, I understand that our governor is going to announce an extension of that tomorrow. And we do have a couple of short-term rentals that are housing people that are essential services. For an example, one nurse who doesn't want to go home and infect her family has arranged to use a short-term rental for a temporary situation. And a contractor working on an essential project, I think in Fenville, will be occupying a short-term rental. But other than that, they're not considered essential services. And we just did notices to inform the public. I don't think they did resolutions. And if the township would like to do that, they would need direction from all of you.
Do you know if this has been a problem recently? Or, I mean, have people been renting their Airbnbs out that you know of, or?
I think it was a problem mostly with the party houses where people's families would come from all over, and or their college students or bachelorette parties, more than just an individual family renting out a house. But you know, that's a policy decision that you can discuss. It's not up to the cities or the townships to rule on what is essential or not. That has to come from our emergency management in Allegan County, which is why they work so closely with the sheriff's department on getting those notices out. But I don't know, what do you think, John?
Well, were those the two notices that we're referencing, were those actually sent to any short-term rental operations, or were they just sent out publicly in hopes that those people will see them?
In the city of Saugatuck, I sent notices to all of my registered property owners and managers. By the time I took out the duplicates, about 67 notices went out by email.
And do we have any idea how much labor would be necessary if the township were to do the same?
I don't really know because I don't know how their database is set up. That would be the hardest part, is going through all those registrations and getting the emails. I had it set up in a database, so it only took me about 3 hours. But it could be quite time consuming.
We have a lot more rentals, don't we, in the township than the cities?
I would think so.
I don't know the answer to that question. I know in the city of Saugatuck, we have 198. And I don't know that keeping those registration databases in the township has been a priority over the past year. I mean, we've had a lot of other things to worry about than short-term rental databases. So
I kind of think, I mean, the governor has made her executive order, and it sounds like it would be a lot of work and time to do this. So I'm kind of leaning towards that we don't send an official notice to each person, maybe put something on our website.
That makes a lot more sense, especially since the 2 other orders have already been drafted. And while I'm not a big fan of plagiarism, I think that reinventing the wheel is kind of silly. So the format is pretty much there. Just maybe a 1-page posting on the website would be more than adequate. And perhaps even an email blast. I don't know how that is set up either. And I don't want Griffin to be spending hours and hours of time on that when he's working so hard to get our budget done.
Griffin's busy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I would like to support the notion of what you just said, that we put together an official Saugatuck Township government notice, put it on the website, send it to the e-blast people, and at least we'll have gone on record. I know we don't have the enforcement capability, but I think it'd be nice to have that in place, and then we can monitor if we get complaints or any other feedback from the public.
Perfect. Is that enough, Griffin, or would you like a motion?
Can I interject, Cindy, for a
Yes.
moment? Okay. And I think you addressed this question, but I'm not sure. Anyway, it was about the complaints. So have we had recent complaints? I know we've had history of complaints about the party houses, but have we had complaints since COVID-19?
Well, yeah, I took a call last week where someone was just basically saying, well, why isn't the township following the lead of the two cities? They didn't have.
But have they complained like, oh, there's people on vacation next door, you know? No, okay.
But we all know
To
there are.
your knowledge, there weren't any of those either?
Pardon me?
Okay, and I was asking Griffin if he
No.
had received any calls.
The only calls I'm getting about short-term rentals are we going to make a statement about them? I'm getting no actual complaints
Specific,
about
right.
short-term rentals.
It's
Okay.
just general concern, not, yeah.
My second question is, and just for people that may inquire with us or email the different board members, what would you suggest that if that does turn up, Griffin, you know, where somebody's saying, hey, I think, you know, they're renting that house out just for vacationers or people that want to get away from the city or whatever.
Mhm.
What is the procedure to advise to those individuals?
I think you could take the language almost directly out of the informational email I sent you all on Monday. So as a reiteration, I spoke with Under Sheriff Larson from the Allegan County Sheriff's Office on Monday about this exact topic. And he informed me that short-term rentals are being treated just like any other violation of the governor's executive order. So folks with concerns or complaints can contact law enforcement. Please encourage them to contact non-emergency numbers, not 911, unless it's an emergency. But they can contact non-emergency numbers for law enforcement, and law enforcement will take note and follow up as they're available, and then pass those reports on to either the Attorney General or the County Prosecutor's Office as applicable.
Would it be appropriate?
Sorry.
Sorry. Would it be appropriate to add those numbers to that notice, you know, of central dispatch rather than 911?
Absolutely.
Most definitely.
Plus, we've been getting, I mean, I got a few calls, I don't know, I know Griffin's gotten several people feeling like something's being violated. It might not be a short-term rental, a business, so we're gonna direct everybody to the Allegan County Sheriff's Department for that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's,
And it's to any law enforcement, not necessarily just the Allegan County Sheriff's Office.
Oh, okay.
Michigan State Police are also following up on many, but yes, to local law enforcement.
or we can, or I sometimes just direct them to Griffin, you know, when I get calls, so.
That's fine too.
Is that okay? Okay.
Absolutely.
People call me.
They do.
I don't know what they call me, but.
Brenda? You're muted.
You're muted.
Dog was barking.
Okay.
Griffin, when you do that, put that together, just send us each a copy, because I think it would take a load off of you. If any of us get the personal calls, we could just look at that and say, here's who you call.
Right.
I mean, we can funnel them to
Absolutely.
you, but I
never know if you would like to know this stuff, Griffin. I'm not sure if you're keeping a list or you don't care, or you don't particularly, we can direct people there, right?
Yep. So Brenda, I'll absolutely share it with the
Okay.
board. Stacy, you all can always direct people towards me. I think the challenge with that, as you all know, is the township has limited capacity to enforce the governor's executive order as well as other code enforcement matters. So you're always welcome to direct them to me, and I will do the best I can.
Yeah, in fact, the township, the municipalities have very little responsibility or ability to do any enforcement.
Right.
It has to all come from the law enforcement. Do you feel you have enough direction, Griffin, or do you want us to make a motion?
Since we're in a formal meeting, a formal motion would be advisable. I've got enough direction, but if you all would like to reiterate that in a motion, I'd encourage that.
John?
Okay, I would like to move that the township board has directed our manager to draft a statement relative to short-term rentals during the COVID-19 situation, similar to the ones already posted by the two cities, that he will post on the website and communicate through our e-blast system and share with each board member, so we have the ability to share them as well as we get inquiries.
Thank you. That was motion by John. Support?
I'll support.
Support by Brenda. And we'll start with Brenda. Marcy?
Yes.
Elmrick?
Yes.
Osmond? Yes. Aldrich?
Yes.
And Bigford?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-1, or 5-0. And I would just add one suggestion, that Griffin wait till after the governor makes her announcement.
Oh, tomorrow.
So we can put an end date on it and not just hang out there.
Right.
Cool.
Okay,
Thank you. That's
committee
good.
report.
The Planning Commission did not meet in March.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Road Commission.
Well, I think Griffin pretty much covered everything that's going on now. Griffin, was there anything else that you were aware of?
Nope, just between the two agenda items for 2020 and 2021 road projects. That's the project in the road. I'm happy to answer any other questions about the roads. Lakeshore Drive, progress is still being made slowly.
That little lane is still open, right? That they can drive
Yes.
on now? Okay.
Fire Board.
March was a record-breaking month, total of 66 calls. EMS counts were 58% of the volume. There were some illegal burns, 4 and 1 grass fire. Illegal burns develop into grass fires, so don't do that. The motor vehicle incidents are really low right now because of the traffic from the governor's stay-at-home executive order. One, big accident was a semi crossed 4 lanes on I-96 and came to rest at Schultz Park. And that's all I got.
Okay, Parks Commission. I think Griffin was going to give us a little information.
Yes, thank you. So Parks Commission Chair Jim Searing passed a few notes on to me that he asked I'd share. The 3 primary notes. Number 1, Sundown Park is still temporarily closed. The old Allegan Sidewalk project was started, but is now on hold due to its non-essential nature during this public health crisis. And lastly, the Parks Commission on their individual exercise walks have been walking a lot in the township parks, and would like to encourage everybody that they are still open, but they are not being disinfected. So please use them at your own risk. And they've shared with me they have lots of ideas for improvements they'd like to see in the future.
Great.
Okay, Cal Lake. I don't think we have Mike here. I didn't see him as a user. Okay, Emergency Services, Griffin.
I also spoke with Tony Shippa, who's the township's committee representative to the Emergency Services Committee, and the 2 updates he asked that I share was, 1, the township has now received the invoices from AMR going back through August due to some of the complications over the last 6 to 8 months. There'd been a delay, but you all approved at this meeting paying those invoices, so we will be up to date on those based on our obligations. And lastly, they've been in communication with Life Ambulance, continuing to look at a proposal to evaluate compared to the AMR, the most recent AMR proposal, with the goal of making a recommendation to the Emergency Services Committee and to the individual boards moving forward.
Thank you. Open board report. Who would like to start? Abby,
I don't have anything.
you don't have anything. Brenda? You're on mute.
Of course, she has to be right next to me. I just want to say, you know, things have been pretty empty. Downtown is empty, and I just appreciate the fact that people are paying attention to the stay-at-home order, that it's very important. And I'm, for one, I'm just glad to see that and recommend that we keep doing it.
Thank you. John?
I just would like to add another expression of gratitude and thanks to Griffin, just relative to being so quick to get the Zoom account going and testing it and having meetings with people. And I thought tonight could not have gone smoother. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Abby or Stacy?
I don't have anything. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate everything you do.
It's nice seeing everyone.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Griffin for making this Zoom business work and pulling it all together so fast and making it very easy for us to run the meeting without hardly a glitch.
I'd like to thank my dog Max for letting me share his bedroom.
And I did see your cat, so.
I thought that was a pillow back there.
No, that's Max.
I'm hoping Dolce didn't hear that because she'll think she should get her own.
I got my door closed, so no cat, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're ready then for the manager report.
Yep.
Yes, thank you. I have a few items for you, but I'll do my best to keep it brief. If I can get to the necessary page, I'm sorry.
175.
There you go. So, let's see if I can turn it. So one of the items I put in the packet for you all is an updated progress tracker based on the adopted township board goals for 2020. One of the discussions we had, not only during goal setting, but at the time of adopting the goals in February, was to have regular progress updates. So as we just concluded the first quarter of 2020, I wanted to do the first progress update for you all. So I think I showed you the basic template for this before, but just to briefly explain what you're looking at. On the left-hand side are the township board's goals. And then you see a spectrum spanning across the year. The boxed in, or the darker boxed areas, those are the times that were outlined in the township board goal document for when we would be primarily working on those items. The example I'll have is rebidding professional services were identified for the second half of the year. Therefore, there's been no progress marked because it wasn't scheduled until later. There were some items that were started prior to, and there are some that are going after, but that's just roughly the outline of how this tracker works. Green means we're on track, yellow means we're moving but slow, and red would mean we're completely off course. Also included in the packet was an updated master projects list that you can see, as well as I included the township board goals document if you all wanted to discuss anything in there. But I'm happy to discuss any specific items there, but really I'm just pleased to announce that for the most part, we are moving forward with all of your goals as expected. Next, in the budget, in the packet, I also included a revenue and expenditure to date document. This is the document that Treasurer Helmrich and I use quite regularly to see where we're tracking based on the current budget year. I shared this all with you at the January meeting, I believe, because we were halfway through the year and now we're done with the third quarter of this fiscal year. So I wanted to include it again. Nothing in particular to point out other than I want to put that in front of you, and I'm happy to discuss any questions you may have in more detail. On to COVID-19, because I think that's one of the hot items on everyone's mind. Understandably, we're going through an unprecedented situation, and there's a lot of people who are hurting right now. So the few updates I have are the governor is expected to extend the stay home, stay safe order in the upcoming days. Just towards the end of the day, I heard as early as tomorrow, so please keep an eye out for that. When that does occur, the township will then issue an additional press release like we have with the other notices outlining how operations will continue and or change at that point. The township has plans to host the April ZBA and Planning Commission meetings as scheduled. They will be hosted electronically if necessary, depending on some developments in the upcoming days. I want to give a lot of credit to Lene Wells. She's our zoning administrator, and as much as she's been helping us while working remotely, it's much appreciated. And I know she's been communicating the best she can with the chairs of both the ZBA and Planning Commission, as well as the necessary applicants to keep them updated on what steps we're taking to try to continue to move forward regular business at this unprecedented time. And then lastly, the township is continuing to pay staff at this point, even those that are working limited or reduced hours and working remotely. However, April 30th is the artificial deadline that I've created that we are going to want to start discussing longer term options if we expect operations to be limited past that point. We may have to discuss some tough decisions about staffing moving forward. But at this point, I at least want you all to be aware that staff continuing to work full hours, staff working remotely, and staff that are being told they cannot work right now, at least in the short term, are being paid as normal. Staff are continuing to work remotely the best they can. I just encourage you all in the public to continue to be as flexible with us as you can. And we are going to continue to do the best we can to provide those services while also complying with the governor's orders and keeping staff safe. I'm happy to discuss COVID-19 anymore, but as you all know, things are changing hour by hour, day by day, so we're just doing the best we can to stay up to date with those. Lastly, and looking for a little direction from the board on this one, as I've been working on the budget, there's been a number of grant opportunities that have appeared, specifically related to some of the stimulus packages coming down from both the state and the federal level. The township's engineer and I had a long discussion this afternoon, and we're really interested in getting some feedback from all of you if you're interested in the staff using some staff time and some of the engineering appropriations we have left to start doing some legwork to then make some runs at some of these grants. It would be a little bit of a change up from what we've discussed in the past. Obviously, there's no guarantee, but one of the big pieces right now is there's a lot of economic development and some utility work money coming down the pipe, both of which that may be beneficial to us. However, we've got some pie in the sky, big picture ideas for projects that would really need to be narrowed down, and we would need to do some engineering work to get some real estimates and some real specs together before we'd be competitive for grants. So if that's something you're interested in, I'm willing to work with our engineer to see what we can do. But I'm looking for some feedback from all of you if at this time that's something you're interested in the organization pursuing. That's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Are we supposed to comment about your comment? Sounds like a good idea.
I would encourage us for staff and to investigate to the, to the level of the capacity to do this, because I think it's a great idea. And also, it's something we've all discussed in the past, that these sort of things have not been pursued that aggressively. And, even if we go for something right now and don't get it, it'll get a framework and a method, a policy kind of method in place for the future. I think it's time well spent if, as I said, the capacity is there.
Brenda, can you provide some capacity with that?
I'd be willing to help. Yeah. I'm on. Okay. Yeah, I'd be willing to help. And any work that you do to prepare for a grant is never wasted. Like John mentioned, you can set any research you do, any of that kind of stuff will hopefully be helpful for other grants as well. What I don't know is how you draw the line between, if you hire the engineer or anybody from the outside to help with it, where you set those limits.
If I can add a little bit, and I'm sorry if I wasn't clear, I think the real work we would need to do at this point would be specifically engineering related. Okay. So the example I'll use is the township has significant undeveloped industrial property on the east side of the expressway that it's been talked about several times about the potential of extending utilities over there. But we've never had the financial resources to make that happen.
Yeah.
Would we want to spend a small amount? I say a small amount. Mm-hmm. Would we want to spend some of our currently allocated resources to put together some more specific specs for what we were thinking about for that area, to then see if we could get large grants to potentially make that possible in the future? When we get to the point of grant writing, I appreciate and I will take advantage of all the assistance I can get from all of you all. Specifically, what I'm talking about at this point is almost investing in future grants. Are we willing to spend a little money to set ourselves up to be successful on grants maybe now? Or if we're not now, have these specs prepared for when other grants become available in the future?
I think it's a good idea.
I'd say absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I support that. Do you have any idea, like an estimate of what we would be spending, Griffin?
Well, we wouldn't be going above what's currently budgeted. And we're getting towards the end of the fiscal year. So without going into it more specifically, and I just had this conversation with the engineer this afternoon, I mean, I would think we'd be talking $2,000 to $4,000 max. And that would just be on some basic legwork to make an application actually competitive.
And as you've said, that money is already, it's in the current year budget. It's not
absolutely
for addition. So
absolutely. And yep, and we would not be going above. I wouldn't be bringing this up at this point in time if we didn't have money available in the current budget.
I wouldn't expect you would. So thank you.
Sounds great.
Sounds like there's a consensus that it's a good idea.
Yes.
And it would be worth spending the small amount of money that it would take to move forward. Okay, we have more opportunity for public comment. Is there anybody that would like to make a public comment?
I'll unmute everybody, so please state your name. Please state your name if you would like to speak. We'll add you to a list consistent with what we did at the beginning of the meeting. Everyone should be unmuted. If you are on the phone, you can also press *6 to unmute yourself, and please say your name if you'd like to speak.
Andy Preach, I'd like to make a comment, please.
Thanks, Andy. Anyone else like to comment? Okay, Madam Supervisor, Andy Preetz is the only name on the list.
Andy Preetz, could you please step forward and make your public comment? Or just lean forward.
Lean forward. First of all, I'd like to commend Griffin again for putting together this meeting. It went very, very smoothly. And with his help, hopefully, and assistance, look forward to working with him on being able to do as good a job with our planning commission meeting later this month. And I would appreciate your help in, organizing that. Secondly, I'd like to, as the township is looking at quoting ambulance service contract that you're looking at, whether it's with AMR or any other provider, if we could look at getting better ambulance coverage for the north end of the township. Currently, AMR supports the north end, north of the Kalamazoo River from Holland, which I feel is not a good situation, that an ambulance has to come all the way from Holland for ambulance service for the north end of town. And so hopefully we can look at other opportunities or alternatives for better service on the north end of town like we have on the south end of town. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Andy Preetz. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment? I know you're out there. Hearing no more comments, I guess I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion that we adjourn this meeting at 7:36.
Is there support?
I'll
Support.
support.
Stacy, support?
I'll support, yep.
Okay, we have a motion. Any discussion? I'll do one more roll call. I can still read your names. Aldrich,
Yes.
Bigford,
Yes.
Marcy,
Yes.
Elmerick,
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, guys. You did a really great job.
Thank you.
Oh, we got a message from Kirk.
Yay, we got a message.
We did?
Yeah.
Yeah, good job.
Oh,